actually got to go to Y'all Fest earlier in November, and I met a lot of awesome authors and a lot of awesome fellow booktubers. And at Y'all Fest, I actually had a really sweet woman come up to me and introduce herself and say, "Hey, I know you, I watch your videos." And that's the first time that that's ever happened to me. I don't know how to comprehend that. I swear half the time I don't even realize that I actually had videos on the internet. But anyway, this girl's name was Julia, and she does have a blog called Stylish in the Stacks, and her booktube channel is called Stylish Stacks. It was just such a pleasure meeting her, so I wanted to mention her for this month's booktuber that I've discovered and have been enjoying. She just started a series called Read It, Do It on her channel, where she reads a book and kind of applies it to her life. And her first Read It, Do It video was based on Dumplin' by Julie Murphy, and I just really loved what she had to say about enjoying life in that video. So as for my actual reading this month, I did read half of what my planned November TBR was, and we will check in with that now. This month I did read 5.5 books, and the reason I say half is because one of them was the last half of Mockingjay in preparation to go see the movie. In terms of my ratings this month, I had a pretty good reading month because I had mostly 5 stars. I had 4 5-star reads, 1 4-star book, and 1 2.5-star book. So starting at the bottom and working my way up to my favorites of the month, I started out November by reading Her Dark Curiosity by Megan Shepherd. This is book number 2 in the Madman's Daughter trilogy, which is a series of gothic literature retellings, this one being a retelling of The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I've read the original book. I worked on a play version of it in high school. I am finding that for me personally, the more familiar I am with an original story, the less I enjoy retellings, and it's very predictable to me, especially when they are too similar. So I am just going to credit my dislike of this book to me being too familiar with the original, because I really loved the first book in this series. I hated the main character this time, I hated the 2 love interests this time, and I didn't mind them in the first book, and I know that they didn't change, like they are the same, so either this was my reading mood or being way too familiar with the original, but this time it was not working for me. I was really frustrated most of the time. These characters could not make up their mind about anything. One page they would make one definitive statement, and the next page they would completely change their minds and say, "No, I've always felt this other way." They're all fools, just make up your minds. But I really am a fan of Frankenstein, and book 3 is going to be a retelling of Frankenstein, so I do want to continue the series and hope that that one kind of works better for me. Next, I finally finished A Feast for Crows by George R. R. Martin, which is book number 4 in the Song of Ice and Fire series. I've been listening to this one on audiobook for probably 3 months now, and just to note, I am doing the chronological read-through where you mash up A Feast for Crows and the 5th book, A Dance with Dragons, and the chapters are spliced together in the actual chronological order that these events happen. I'm liking it. I like that read-through. I would definitely suggest it if you're interested in doing it. And it just so happens that in that read-through you finish up with A Feast for Crows earlier. That kind of presents a problem for me in knowing how to distinguish the 2 books and knowing how I want to rate them. I'm going to go with a 4-star rating for this book because I definitely have not enjoyed them as much as I've enjoyed previous books in the series, and I feel like his writing, to be honest, has gotten a little bit lazy and also perverse. I'm kind of sick of hearing descriptions of breasts. Why? I don't understand why all of the characters would notice the same things about every single female character that you come across in this book. There are a lot of really gratuitous lesbian scenes that are not really lesbian characters. They're just doing these things because he wants this woman and woman action. As far as the lazy writing, there are several characters, they have these key phrases that they repeat, and I just kind of find it hard to believe that so many different characters kind of have the same coping mechanisms. That's just my opinion. I still really definitely enjoy the series. I like the fantasy world, I do like the characters, but I'm hoping that the last third or so of A Dance with Dragons is a little bit better than what I have read so far. So the rest of the books I read this month were all rated 5 stars, and I'm going to start out with Mockingjay by Suzanne Collins, book number 3 in the Hunger Games trilogy. And I only read the last half of it this month. That's why I've said I read 5.5 books. I read the first half of this book last year before Mockingjay Part 1, the movie, came out. I haven't read the end of this book in probably 2 or 3 years now, so I really wanted to have a refresher of what was happening. I love Mockingjay. I think it was a very strong ending to the series. I've reread it 3 or 4 times now, and I love it more every time I read it. This book mimics and follows the same pattern as the first 2 books did. I really love that Mockingjay makes a point of showing actual war looks a lot like the arena with the Hunger Games that were this big entertainment thing. So I am sticking with my original rating of 5 stars for Mockingjay. Then I listened to the audiobook version of Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. I'm not going to summarize what the story is about because I'm sure it's such a classic that a lot of people know it, but it is a very classic romance. This was my first time reading or listening to the original version of the words that were written, because every single time I have tried to start this book in the past, which has been several times, I can't make it past the first page because the dialogue, it drove me crazy, which is horrible of me. I know I have read other classics though, and I didn't have a problem with those, so I don't know what it was, but listening to this book and listening to the narrator have all those little inflections and the tones and use the dialogue in such a natural way, that was what I needed. I needed to hear this instead of read it. And I really enjoyed the story. It definitely did not disappoint. Even though I was so familiar with it, I've seen like every adaptation and retelling that I can get my hands on because I really do love the story, and I don't think I would feel right giving Pride and Prejudice anything less than 5 stars. Next, I read ILLUMINAE by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. This is a story about a planet that was attacked and blown up, and the entire book is told through emails and through video surveillance and through instant messages and personal diaries. So it definitely is an interesting format. I absolutely loved this book and I adored the format of it. Something that makes this book stand apart from other books that are told in this case file sort of storytelling way is that we actually had the point of view of an artificial intelligence system, and the way that these authors brought that AI to life was so fascinating to me. And one of the reasons this book is so hard to accurately summarize is because to really tell you what it's about, it kind of doesn't get into it until around halfway. If you don't want to know any more about what this book is about, then mute it until this cover image goes away. But if you want to know a good selling point, or if you want to just know more about what the book is about, I'm just going to say zombies in space. The last book I read this month was Walk on Earth a Stranger by Ray Carson, and I also gave this one 5 stars. This is a historical novel about the California gold rush, and we follow the point of view of a girl who can sense gold. She can point out where it is in the ground, and people want to take advantage of her, and so in order for her to escape her hometown and make her way to California, she disguises herself as a boy. I loved this story so much. It is a survival story. It is very pioneer lifestyle. This is just a genre and a type of story that I really love. I guess I'm just really into the man versus nature thing and seeing how humans can overcome really harsh living conditions. Like, I feel like we take for granted today electricity and technology, and if it was all taken away, what would life be like? And we don't have to wonder because that's where humanity came from. So I adored this book. I buddy read this with Lauren over at Books and Tea and All Things Me, and it was great to read it with her. One thing that we were talking about is we loved how realistic this girl's journey was because she is dressed up like a boy, and she actually has her period in the book and she has to deal with it. Now, it's not described in a gross way or anything, it just is. It's a natural occurrence, and it could obviously give you away if you're dressed up like a boy. She had to deal with that. I will say though that this book had several squeamish moments for me, which really just added to it in my opinion, but they were kind of hard to read. And there were also characters that treated different races in awful ways. This is set during a time before slavery had been abolished, so some of the white men were treating African American slaves in awful ways. They also treated Native Americans in awful ways, and this book will fill you with righteous indignation, but it was very historically accurate. And our main character, she really leveled it out because she knew that the way these guys were treating people of different races was not right. The one gripe I have is that I don't appreciate when books portray the one religious character that they include as a bad guy. It didn't take away my enjoyment of the rest of the story. I really, really enjoyed it. I would highly recommend it. So that's what I read in November. Let me know what you guys read this month, and if you've read any of the books that I read, let me know what you thought about them. If you have any questions about any of these books that I did not cover in these reviews, please let me know down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the comments. Bye!